EJ, how are you?
Hi, Chris. I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Great to see you there. Thanks for inviting me on today.
Oh,
Hope you're well.
it's an absolute pleasure. Just quick thank you to Nick for hooking us up. Nick's been a great guy for this podcast. He's certainly got an eye for people with a story that needs to be told.
He's great. He's a champion. Champions everything that I'm doing as well, which is great. So yes,
Yeah,
I second that. Big shout out to Nick.
he's a good guy. He's a good guy. And your story, EJ, blimey. I don't know where to begin. I'm just going to read a bit that I took offline. So at 9 years old, you were assaulted. Um, Friends, this is a serious assault. We're kind of watching our language here a bit because of the platform, but serious assault by a restaurant owner who'd befriended your family on holiday. At 12 years old, in your words, your beautiful, handsome hero dad said he couldn't see you again, and he didn't. At 13, a family friend groomed and then again seriously assaulted you for the next 3 years. Now you're campaigning. You lead a campaign called Not My Shame.
Yeah.
And I know that you're an author because I've got a copy of your book here, which I'm going to show everyone now. Don't Hold Back. I was reading the forward early on. You're a speaker, and also I just you're you're into your fitness like myself, and you're also a coach. And I just wanted to pick a couple of quotes that I got from you, which are just wonderful. Too positive to be doubtful, too optimistic to be fearful, and too determined to be defeated. Emma Jane Taylor. And the other one was, life may not always be perfect, but it is, and we must find that the beauty to see clearly. I might have screwed that up a bit because I dictated it using the Microsoft Word microphone thingy. Yes, and yes, EJ. Gosh, where to begin? Do you want to just tell us your story?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think it's, what like you said, when I was 9 years old, the first assault had happened. Um, it was a sexual assault on me by the restaurant owner who had befriended my family on a holiday overseas. At the time, I was 9 years old, and the restaurant owners were, so friendly, so nice. They would take me and the other children outside to see the animals whenever we ate there, which was quite often, it was every 2 or 3 nights, and we were there for 2 weeks. And near the end of the holiday, of course, they'd really sort of befriended us, and so everybody felt safe. I think when you sort of think back then, it was 1981 as well. We didn't have sort of any concerns about, these nice people looking after our kids when we were eating. So yeah, I went outside with a group of kids, and I got, in fact, when I sort of looked back, I could still see the restaurant. I can hear the music. The atmosphere is warm, it's friendly, it's alive. And he took me just out of sort of the shadows, into the shadows, out of the light of the restaurant where all the other children were. And there was, like I remember there was donkeys and goats, and, it was just, for me as an animal lover, it was just a perfect evening. Of course, it didn't end up perfectly in that he took me to one side, and the assault happened. It, I don't remember thinking I didn't know what had happened to me. I was 9 years old. I mean, we didn't have these conversations. We didn't know, you know, what was right, what was wrong. And so I do remember running back into the restaurant and running into the bathroom. And I do remember someone knocking on the door to see if I was okay, but I didn't tell anybody. It was, I didn't actually know what it was. And so it becomes like this secret. You're 9 years old, you're like, I'm fine, I'm fine. Too scared to speak up, too scared to say anything. And that's sort of my memory of what happened there. I never really shared that until later on into my life. But it was horror. It was a horrible time in that, it goes back to this conversation where, I was a child told to be careful of strangers when actually it wasn't the strangers that I should be careful of. It was people known to me. As you quite rightly said, fast forward to sort of later, a few years later, um, I had been living with my mother and my stepfather, my two brothers, and from time to time my step siblings. My parents had separated when I was maybe 2, 3 years old. I used to see my father every other weekend. I knew no different. I remember actually just being very happy. I wasn't suffering. I had a nice group of friends. And yeah, they were the long, happy sort of days of being a child. Obviously, the incident that happened at 9 had happened. Um, I think I'd suppressed that. And maybe if what happened next hadn't have happened, maybe I would have always suppressed it. Maybe I wouldn't be here today talking to you, Chris. And like so many people are, because they just push it down. And I idolized this man, my father. I would go and see him every other weekend. Some of my happiest memories were of hanging out with him. He was funny. He would pick me up. We'd go to our local sweet shop. We would go swimming. We'd watch, Bruce Forsyth on telly, memorizing everything on the conveyor belt and the cuddly toy, and just happy times. And times that I held very close. And even when things started to change, it was very hard for me to separate that, because I always think of him as a really nice person. But I think lots of things maybe were happening in the families which I was unaware of. And then when I was around 12, like you say, it was on the way to the horse riding stables. And on the way there, he had sort of stopped to say that there was a problem in our relationship. Um, I don't remember talking to him about it because I didn't have any words or dialogue. I just remember feeling a bit sick. And then he took me horse riding, and then the next day he said he'd call me. Um, and that, just through conversations that then happened, it transpired that he was never going to see me again. Um, and so yeah, I mean it was like a bullet through my entire body. I felt just absolutely shattered. And actually, of course, it didn't really truly realize it actually meant he'd never see me again. Because it was sad to hear him say that he wouldn't see me again. Maybe when I was in my late teens, we'd pick up a relationship. I was 12. I needed him then. Um, but he wasn't, and I replaced the phone. I remember running out of that house. I remember just crying, and I had my mother and my stepfather in hot pursuit behind me. They wrestled my tears to the ground. Um, and that was that. In the blink of an eye, my hero, my father, he'd gone. Um, I was devastated at that, actually, truly devastated. And I think when I kind of look back at that, my father abandoning me, um, massively affected my relationships after that day. It haunted me. It absolutely haunted me. One minute I was happy, giggling, excited, young girl, and the next I was a broken child. I was, sobbing, shaking, nauseous, nervous. I guess I don't ever understand why this happened, because even if there were rumblings in the family, um, you fight for your kids. You don't lose that hope for your kids. They need you. Children need their parents. And fight harder if you have to, but don't give up on your children. Don't ever give up on your children. I struggled to make decisions for a long time after my father had left. I was a nervous wreck, actually. I suffered with huge abandonment issues, fear of being rejected. And it all sort of stayed with me as I grew up. And I guess it became such a personal conflict. I was wishing every birthday, every Christmas, every Easter, every celebration, that he would just come back, or a card would land through the letterbox, that he would scoop me up and tell me that he loved me and everything would be okay. For anyone who remembers Surprise, Surprise with Cilla Black, I wrote and prayed that I would be that long lost child reunited with her daddy. Um, and I wasn't. I wasn't, and I didn't really talk about it. It was I was internalizing it. I guess it was coming out with my emotions, with how I was, portraying my sadness through, through crying and sickness, and anger started bubbling up. I guess being sexually abused at 9 and my father abandoning me then sort of started taking its toll. They kind of like the two things started to rub, and it started to make me feel even more unsettled. I went totally off the rails at school. I was deeply insecure, vulnerable, had low self-esteem. I was desperate to be loved. I began having flashbacks of what had happened to me at 9 years old. I felt very dirty. I felt ashamed of what had happened. It was an awkward conversation going around in my head, and therefore I became quite confused. The happy child was sort of getting further and further away. She was getting more withdrawn, more nervous, more sad. I was very hollow as a person. I lived pretty much on a knife's edge, and it was bizarre. Something happened actually around that time. I had this trigger, a need to be clean actually. So I started bathing to scrub away that horrible fear of shame and feeling dirty. But of course, now I realise that all sort of matches my being 9 years old. Um, so yeah, high school became a troubling time. I failed miserably. I had no enthusiasm. Ironically, the school that I was going to for my senior school was chosen because it was close to where my father had lived. Um, but of course I didn't ever utilize that because I didn't see him as soon as I started. So it was another pressure for me going past his house every day. Um, I was a naughty girl from the start, labelled a juvenile delinquent, sent to a child psychiatrist. I was having a meeting once a week with some of my teachers just to, I don't really know what they did. They weren't therapists, but I think they were just trying to sort of help me because they could see I was sad, but no one really could understand why or help me through it. A lot of the staff, I guess, saw that or recognized that my father had left, and that was my trauma. But of course, I had other traumas behind that stacking up. Um, so speaking out has been, was difficult. I couldn't really do it. I was living and breathing my own story. It was becoming normal to me to not speak out, to behave in the ways that I was behaving, to start believing that there aren't good people in my life. Um, and I felt very low. I felt unsure where to turn next. I spiraled completely out of control, completely. Um, Being treated badly became something that I accepted. And when I was 13, as you said at the beginning, Chris, someone known to my family took advantage of that. And I completely trusted him. It was the first time anyone had come along and been my friend. Maybe I saw him as the missing father figure. I don't know. But it was to me a relief actually that someone had showered me with affection and showed me a friendship. Um, and that friendship came with kindness, with gifts. But there was a real price to pay for that. And that was that I was groomed, I was degraded, tortured, assaulted, sexually manipulated. He controlled my every move. I was putty in his hands in many respects because I was such a broken child. Would do anything to be liked. This person would follow me to school, follow my bus, literally wherever I went, this person was. He manipulated me to do everything he wanted. I lied, I cheated, I stole, I got involved with this person who fed me with alcohol and drugs. Um, and yeah, I mean, he would have his way with me. And that was the price to pay for having a friend who would be kind. And that's such an awful thing to say, but it's a reality for so many people who have been grieved or have been insecure and unstable and without any, confidence. For me, it was very low self-esteem, and feeling very rejected and abandonment. And here I was now, even in an even darker situation with someone controlling everything, everything about me. My life became a blur, really, when you consider what was going on, the drugs, the drink, the pain, the loss. Um, and it felt like at sometimes that there was no way out. I felt suicidal at times. I felt a lot of pain. I wanted everything to go away. Um, and I couldn't understand all the behaviors of people, from what happened at night to what my father did to what this person went. It was very confusing. And when you're going through those developmental years, it's truly catastrophic because you're not being nourished and you're not learning, and you're not understanding how to be treated, how to speak up, how to behave. And so that was my story, Chris. Everything suffered after that. Um, my schooling, I became addicted to painkillers to numb my hangovers. I drank heavily. I took drugs, laxatives. I became bulimic. Um, I used to listen to Cliff Richard's Daddy's Home on loop, wishing my father would come back and pick me up and help me. Um, and I never stopped dreaming of that day, actually, and that hurt in many, many, many years, more than he probably would have ever have imagined, or anyone else around me. But that is sort of my story, unfolded sort of for the next few years. When I was 16, I found some strength to step away from my abuser, but the damage was done with the addictions and the disorders that I'd collected over the years, I guess, as trauma responses. And it took a fine amount of time, Chris, to get through that.
Yeah. Yes. Getting over substances, you don't need to tell me. EJ, what a story. So, just off the top of my head, where was your mother in these years then, between 13 and 16? Or why wasn't she aware of this?
So I think, I don't hold my parents responsible, my mother and my stepfather. There was five children, with me and my brothers and the step siblings, and it was busy. It was busy. You're talking about the 70s, the 80s, where everybody left their babies out in the street. You would, let your kids walk into the towns. We trusted people. Now, the cover up, I think, for my story was my father had left. I was a distraught child, and they were trying to help me through that. But of course, it was far darker and deeper. And the knowledge we have today is that you probably want to go a little bit deeper than, the conversations on the surface of, well, the child is devastated because she's lost her father, but actually, is there anything else we need to look at? But we didn't have those, that signaling and signposting and support back then to do that. So they did what they could with me. They loved me, they were good parents. I don't blame them for what happened. I've learned from them, um, and that's why I've taken what I've taken forward, because many parents are being groomed by the groomers who are assaulting and sexually abusing the children. They are often known to the family, friends, family. And I think it's really important to say that it's not about pointing fingers at what may or may not have happened to me then. It's about understanding that that was not the knowledge. It was stranger danger. That's what we were taught. That's what we did. That's what we focused on. I'm still scared of the man in the white van who might stop and pull up and ask me if I want to go and see his puppy's kittens or have some sweets. But that's not really a reality, right? I mean, that's not a thing. But if I'm out walking and a white van comes past, sorry, white men, white van drivers, it's that's not them. It's the education I had as a child and a fear that was drilled into me. You know, I was told to scream and shout and do anything I could if a van pulled up and tried to put me in the back of the van. But no one taught me to scream and shout and say no to the person I knew and loved. No one, because we didn't have that education. And that's what I've taken forward. So, you know, my parents, like many parents, feel pretty rotten, right? Because of what happened to me. And I speak to lots of families who feel pretty rotten about what's happened to their child. But the focus has to be on what happened to the child and how we can learn from that and how we can take that education forward, and ensure that we stranger danger, yeah, it's like 10% of the conversation. The 90%, which is obviously part of my charity, is that it's people known to us, and that's what the focus has to be. And that helps. We have to help parents understand what they can do, what they can look out for, and how we can support children. But I suspect we'll talk about that as well.
Yes. Emma, just 1 second. Friends at home, we've got a slight audio glitch, but just I'd appreciate it if you bear with us, is what I'm trying to say. We're going to cruise on through rather than stop and start again. EJ, did you ever find out the reason that your dad up and left?
So I don't know the ins and outs. I think there had been controversy between the two families. He had moved on with another family. My other brothers had already been told they couldn't see him. And I suspect there are lots of conversations on the other side that we'll never understand because, well, I will never understand because, why would you not see your child? So, um, my my thoughts to this is, like I said at the beginning, doesn't matter what's going on between adults. If you are a parent, you see through that. Make it about the child because the child will be the one who suffers, not the adults. It's the child who suffers. And I am here telling that story today. So it was a weekend to see my father, and it was also Mother's Day weekend. And I was given a question, which was if I saw my mum on Mother's Day, I probably won't be able to see my dad again. And I thought, I didn't really understand that, but I said I wanted, I remember the call actually. I said, Daddy, I want to see Mummy on Mother's Day, but I do want to see you as well. And he said, well, you've made your choice, and that's it, kind of thing. And that was it. And the other fallout was, of course, having made that decision and had a catastrophic outcome, I couldn't make decisions. I couldn't make a decision again for years and years and years and years. I mean, personally, even decisions today, I have to really balance them out. And people who know me will tell you I'll take a lot of time to answer questions because I have to be balanced and certain that I'm doing the right thing. Not because I think people are going to cut me out on that, but just so that I'm clear that I'm strong enough with that decision. Professionally, I can make decisions left, right, and centre quite quickly. But personally, I know that has been something that's been catastrophic for me throughout my younger years. because didn't want to. I was scared to lose more people. I mean, you just, that was my world, is making the wrong decision, something that's going to cost me another person that I loved. So yeah, that was it. And I'm sure, Chris, it's probably a lot more deeper and complicated, but as a child looking at it, that's what it was to me. It was just me answering a question. I said the wrong answer, or maybe I said the right answer, right?
Yes. Oh, EJ, don't know where to begin. I remember as a child, gosh, how old was I? Uh, 9, maybe 8 or 9. My dad driving 300 miles up to Lincolnshire because my mum had left home. We got out of the car, me and my sister, and I remember he just dropped our bags on the pavement. By this time, my sister had run inside because to her, it was just about seeing her grandma, who, for me, it's like I'm never going to see my dad again.
Mm.
And he just, first time I'd ever seen him cry, just threw his arms around me, said, "I love you, son." And he just hopped back in his bloody minivan, I think it was. And he drove off down the road, and I could just see him crying, and he was waving in the mirror. And yeah, at that, I didn't know they were going to get back together and then subsequently split up loads more times. And that I was going to go to, I think, 5 schools before that I was 11. But yeah, in that moment, I thought I'm never going to see my daddy again. You know, the most important person in my life, or joint person, I suppose I should say. Yes, it's incredible, and I mean, I remember it was like a thing in the 70s and 80s that people would just up and like leave their whole family behind, or deny that they'd had a baby with someone, and like, well, that's your job, love, you sort all that out. I'm just going to pretend like I didn't get you pregnant so I can go on with my. And I think I'm not trying to blame anyone. I think just everyone's a victim in this equation. But gosh, do you think in this respect times are changing?
I don't know. I think they're changing in many ways, not for the better as well, when you consider social media and the impact of that. I think, there's a lot more emphasis on supporting fathers as well, through difficulties. Now, I'm not saying that who's right or wrong here. I'm just saying, I think from this instance, I think that he should have had a lot more support to have seen what the outcome of that would
Ah,
potentially look like.
absolutely. You know, anyone comes up with, they're going to put a stunt like that, they need to be taken to one side and had it
Yeah,
told them, is it?
you're going to ruin your children's lives.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, they're going to be, the people battling addiction of the future.
yes,
And I mean, one of the most powerful images in my mind is, as someone that's battled addiction for, well, I say battle, but I'm just going to say been involved with it for probably 35 years, is becoming a father.
mm,
And then just envisaging, if that's the right word, your child wandering down the street with a bottle in their hand, bouncing off the walls when you're gone, and yes. Sorry, friends at home, just not judging anyone here.
no.
Just talking around the
I think
situation.
yeah, and I think there'll be lots of people. My story isn't unique, nor is yours. And I think that's the thing, is at the time I was like, oh my goodness, I'm the only person who's lost their father. And I was ashamed of that, which, when I realized I'd been sexually abused, I thought I was the only person who'd been abused. But the reality is I'm not. So have times have changed? Yes, I think they have, Chris. I mean, we're starting to have more conversations about maybe it isn't stranger danger. We're starting to understand that actually, you know, men need support too. And I'm not saying that what happened to me wasn't wrong, because it was wholly, it just absolutely the pits. No father or mother should walk away from a child, in my opinion. There should be a lot more support. But I think they and those that era weren't getting support, right? They weren't having therapy, they weren't having counseling. Whereas I think now, going back to your question, there is more support for adults and parents. So I think significantly times have changed, but I still hear stories where fathers have just left their kids, or in fact, rarely, but still significantly so, mothers as well. But a lot of the time, when you go into those stories, a lot of men and women are needing a lot of help, and they're just not getting it, or they're too proud to ask for it. And of course, therefore, if they are parents, their children are suffering by default, because they are not getting through their difficulties. So, and then you've got a grown adult, who may well have gone through trauma, you don't know, who's now suffering and walking away from their family. But then you've got the children who are undeveloped. Their brain hasn't processed life. If you look at the scientific part of it, brains don't really develop until late teens, 20s. Some people now actually say late 20s. So when your children are becoming adults, they're becoming adults with trauma through those developing years. And actually, that's their lesson, right? And then you're going to take that on to the next part of their life. And then the journey of trauma continues.
Yes.
And that's where we need to stop, and that's where we need to go. We need some more help. So I think that was a bit of a long answer, but yes, I do think the times have changed, because people are recognizing that that person, now an adult, needs support.
Yes, so people got married younger back then as well, didn't they? And when I think of
Yeah.
my younger self, bloody hell, I I
Yes.
I openly admit I would have been I couldn't have been a father. I had too much issues myself. Um, so what was it like then, EJ, when you got into your first relationship where it was stable and the person was, I know relationships don't always last long, but you had a person that treated you well.
I had lots of relationships from my 20s through to my 30s. And I truly believe I had lots of relationships because there was no way anyone was going to dump me, leave me. So I would, if anything felt uncomfortable or there was a conversation to be had, my, my automatic is, are they going to dump me? Um, and so I would dump them, because no one was ever going to make me feel that much pain and heartache. I was also very conflicted with what a healthy relationship looked like, because of what had gone through my abusive years from 9 through to 16. Um, so I was very underdeveloped. My mind wasn't very, I wasn't very mature really, because I'd been sort of stilted with that, because of what had happened to me. So each relationship was temperamental, and that's probably because of me more than them. And it was very volatile. But it was also fueled by drink, drugs, crazy shit. um, um, and I remember one boyfriend saying, "If you go out tonight," because we were supposed to go out for dinner, and he said, "If you go out tonight, I just can't do this anymore." And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm going out with my mates."
Mhm.
Because he'd given me an ultimatum, and he'd given me, and I'm so, So I had lots of complex relationships, understanding emotions, physical relationships, understanding what I needed to do to exist in them. So I took myself into therapy at 23. That's when I started my businesses. And sort of that's where I sort of stayed for a good sort of 15, 20 years really. Um, and it's been a part of my life and my recovery. I've gone through an A to Z of therapy, but it's been the best thing that I did. Relationships have got better and better as I got older because I became wiser and smarter, and I was growing up, and my brain, I think, was catching up. I was no longer the child in the relationship. And now I am engaged. I'm getting married this year um, to someone who has taken a great deal of time to be able to support me and me them as well. So I'm 52 this year, so I feel very lucky to have met someone now who I feel I can enjoy my life with. We talk very openly when we need to, not all the time. You don't need to have these conversations all the time, but they do come up. But it's been a process, right? I mean, you look at life and you think, what is life? Well, certainly I know what my life's been. I know what I've needed to do to become from 9 through to 52. That's a lot of years, right? Um, would I change it? Of course. I wish that none of that had happened to me and I'd been able to be, be what I needed to be without being rejected, abused, and banded. I don't know any different. And so, therefore, my education has led me to do everything that I'm doing now because that's all I know. And now it feels, I'm sure you're very well aware of why. And, it feels like the right thing to be here doing this with everything that I'm doing from my well-being business, my performing arts school to my campaigning and the charity. I feel that this is all I've ever known, and it doesn't feel dark. It feels sad and horrible sometimes when you're listening to people's stories and realizing the enormity of these conversations. But it now feels like I'm where I need to be.
Yes, I hope with your new or your partner, I hope they turn out to be so special to you that the past was there for a reason, if that makes sense.
I truly believe that, and I think one of the nicest things that had happened when I met him was that he did some reading about supporting someone who'd gone through this abuse. So he was, fairly knowledgeable of that, before we even started. But life isn't a textbook. Life isn't a book. They are guides and they are, helpful to our journeys. Um, Me as well. I mean, I have to understand the person I'm with because I have my own quirks, but so have they, and I think that's really important for us all to remember is anyone who's gone through any trauma has their ways, their beings, but so do the people you're with. And I think it's just about working how you can work that together.
Yes. EJ, was there ever a point, do you remember, where you kind of, I don't know, let's just say metaphorically, looked yourself in the mirror and thought, oh my God, that was what was done to me. This is how it's affected me. That's not fair. I'm I'm struggling for the words, but I'm going to go forward and start looking after number one, because clearly you've got yourself in a wonderfully strong position where you're helping so many people now. So was there I mean, my story is I got so low at one point. I think it was a nervous breakdown, probably number 4 or something, and I couldn't go any lower. The only way to go lower would have been to have taken myself out the game, and I wasn't going to do that. And it was in that utter desperate desolation that I suddenly thought about that little boy, left on a street 300 miles away from home, and all the other stuff that went on, which wasn't particularly good. And I thought, hang on a sec, who's not looking after that little boy now, Chris? It's you, mate. It's you. You're the one sticking the drugs in his body. I'm talking about me, folks, before you get someone gets the wrong idea. I wasn't looking after me, was I? And I thought, oh, God. And in that moment, I just made a few promises to myself, which I've kept to this day, albeit, the nature of relapse and lapsing is all part and parcel of recovery. And I'm wondering if you had that kind of epiphanal moment.
Yes, I had a couple actually. I had one when I was working in a pub, and one of the local lads came in. His name is Chris, and I tell him every time I see him, I'm here because of you. Uh, he he said, "What do you want to do with your life, EJ?" And at the time, I'm a performer as well, so I'm an ex-dancer, professional dancer. And I said, I just want to be performing and I don't know, doing like some performing arts school. And he started laughing, and I'm like, why are you laughing? And he said, but I can't see you doing that. You're just such a party animal. And I thought, oh, holy crap. I don't want to be known as the party animal. There is more in me than that. There is a lot more in my soul than to end my life as the party girl. And it was a real moment that I just thought, right, I'm gonna go waking up from that. And then I had another moment when my stepfather, my stepfather had a heart condition when I was 19. Um, and it was the first time since my father had left, sort of 11, 12, dumped me, that I'd hated everybody up until then, right? I hated everybody, my mother, my stepfather, my family, anybody got close to me because of, all the hurt and stress I was going through. And then I got a call to say my father was seriously ill. My stepfather was seriously ill in hospital. So I raced up to the hospital. It was in London. And oh my God, I thought he was going to die. And I'm suddenly looking at him thinking, you're the only man who loved me, cared for me, been kind to me, showed me respect when I didn't deserve it. Um, but he was a leveler for me, and it rocked me, completely rocked me. I got on a plane, I went to Spain, came back 3 years later. Anyway, he went through various treatments, open heart surgery, and it really turned my story around, because I was like, okay, I need to stop putting my father on a pedestal and hoping he's going to come back, because he's not. I've got people here who love me. My mum, my stepfather. Look, they might not have got everything right by us as kids, but they are solid rocks, emotional rocks. And then those were those two moments, and then another moment, which was probably more recently when I started to start talking about the Camp Not My Shame hashtag, was had driven past, and it was the first time I'd ever driven past the lay-by that my father stopped in before he took me to the horse riding stables that day, and I went cold. I was utterly almost vomiting. So I pulled into the lay-by, um, and I felt sick. I was emotional. I was crying. I'm like, this is where it happened. Um, and I had my fiance in the car with me, actually. It was a couple of years ago. And we went to the horse riding stables. We walked around the horse riding stables. And I was like, everything's changed. Everything's changed. And so have I. And actually, none of this was my fault. And then that's when it started swirling around, the not my shame and not my fault. And I put it out on Twitter, maybe in 2000. 18, 19, just that, none of this was my shame. And then I put it out again and it kept getting lots of attention. And then I put my quote together and I put that out online in 2023 and it went viral and here we are. And bless you.
Oh, excuse me. I managed to hit pause on the microphone before I sneeze. I'm a technical guru, EJ.
So yeah, and I think those were my three moments. The guy in the pub, my stepfather having his bypass and his heart problem. And then that moment in the lay-by. There were other little moments across the years. Of course there were. There's a zillion of them, but those were the three significant ones for me. Um, my father is 88 now. My stepfather's 88. He's still with us, going strong. So is my mother. They're very now supportive of everything that I'm doing and difficult for them, but very supportive. They understand because people talk to them about, I guess lots of other parents, now open up about it. So it's been a bit of a bloody journey turning that around because going out publicly hasn't been nice for all sorts of reasons, but I knew I didn't want to not. And because I knew that there'd be other people like me. And if I could help one person, then it would have all been worth it. But I think there's been a lot more from what I've certainly done. And I know there's millions of me out there doing lots of great things. And that's good. We need more. We need more of those millions of people because the more this conversation is heard, the more we can really put the reality of it and get it seen. And I think, certainly I digress here a little bit, but we need the political world to lean in much, much more on the reality of these conversations because they're happening. No one cares enough to do anything. But anyway,
Well,
I
that
digress there at the end.
it's also half of them are involved in it. Is it not?
Yeah. Well, I guess, those are conversations, probably a longer podcast to have on that because, I think the trouble is there's a lot of people wondering why the political world aren't leaning in. And of course it makes everybody point fingers and actually sort of query why aren't you, right? Why aren't you getting behind this? The seriousness of it. Um, so so those are my three moments.
Yeah.
And there was one other significant moment when it was through my therapy and it was probably one of the last uh serious deep sessions I'd had, and it was with my therapist, my psychotherapist, and he unlocked something that was a memory um that I'd never even considered would have formed the life, the associations going forward. And I think that's a lot of it is, when you have gone through trauma like you have as well, Chris, you'll have that memory of you being dropped off by your father and that memory of the tears and watching him drive away. Well, that feeling that feeling will show up in other parts of your life, and you won't realize actually it associates to that until suddenly someone goes, actually, that moment, that day where you were feeling slightly insecure and vulnerable over that, does that ever resonate with any part of your life? And you'll probably go, well, actually it does. I remember that I felt like that here, and I do remember feeling like that there. So there was lots of work that I started doing that crossed over, if that makes sense. And that's what's then started a bit of an extra healing for me.
Yes, I was invited to a healing weekend at Glastonbury by a wonderful chap who's become good friends with me, Guy, and we did a plant ceremony. And I'm not sort of advocating this or anything, folks. I'm just saying we did it. For me, it was more because I never say no to experience to get off my head, but it was horrific as all those things are for me. It was just like, why am I doing this? This is just, I was just seeing demons just kept coming at me. But I just took it. The one thing I took away from it is I think they call them intrusive memories, don't they? That, that thing that thing that comes out the past that always like, or that thing that you anchor yourself to and I only sort of really had one left. And that ceremony just said, right, just let that one go now, Chris. You know,
Mm.
you're using it as like a frame of reference as to how things were back, but all of that doesn't exist now. What exists now is just your beautiful life, and I'm really lucky to have, you know, I I don't mind saying it. I have the best life ever. I literally live in paradise, and and from that moment I told you about, my lowest moment, that was it. Just I decided in that moment, just in a nutshell, don't be a victim, and appreciate this life, because I knew even by that age, I was 28. I know so many people that were dead, especially Marines that I served with. I thought, God, what would they give, Chris, to be here now? Would they be destroying themselves, you know, living in a hovel, or would they be out there smashing it and firing and getting on it? And that was it. The light come into my life then. I remember physically feeling the light coming into me like a ready black glow.
Ready Brett glow,
Yeah,
yes.
and I've carried it ever since. So I never had, you know, even if I wake up the wrong side of bed, I still know it's just in my head, you know.
It's there. And actually, it's funny you talk about that. I get out. I am genuinely a very happy person,
Mm,
and I think that probably comes from all those trauma, sad, horrible years of darkness. Um, I go to bed, I try to, unless there's stuff going on. I try to go to bed fairly content, and I wake up fairly happy, um, because there's little to no point in being other for me anyway. I'm talking about me here, because the darkness and the sadness and the troubles are a long way away for me. I haven't touched alcohol or drugs or anything since I was 24, 25.
wow.
I'm now a fitness addict, who doesn't eat cake, crisps, chocolate, sweets, or anything. And people have an issue with that. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, literally, if I'm on the streets taking drugs, I'm a loser. And if I'm a fitness addict, I'm neurotic. I'm like, actually, I'm very happy here. I train 90 minutes every day. I do lots of events. I am focused on my fitness, but it's sanity, not vanity for me. I need to train every day, and then my day's ready. Weekends, I slow it down. It's not so hardcore. I'm like maybe a swim on a Saturday, and gardening and walking and stretching on a Sunday. Then my active rest days. But when you've gone through trauma, don't judge people for how they live, what they do, why they do it. Accept that they are in a place of strength because of where they are and what they're doing today. That's it. I don't need to be like criticized because I don't eat cake. I'm very happy. In fact, I would rather people didn't eat cake because it's fattening for you. Not fattening, but it's full of fats and sugars, and but I'm not going to judge you for it. That's your
Yeah.
choice. And so don't judge me. I'm very happy. Thanks.
Yes. It's have you thought of it like this? When people come out with this stuff, it's a mirror to themselves, EJ. You know, that it's that they've got their own traumas that they haven't worked through, and what they do
Mm.
is project them onto other people. And comment section on just, you can just physically see the, and I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at the person. I'm sort of highlighting the can't think of the word, like the contradiction of it all is when you come out and attack other people, you're just basically telling the world, I've got unresolved trauma, and rather than deal with it and become a beautiful enlightened person who's just got nothing but love, peace, kindness and empathy for everyone, I'm going to attack other people. and
I know, it's
and
crazy, and I don't understand it. It's ridiculous.
well, they're not where you are they? They haven't made that beautiful journey and of recovery and healing. And I always say, I mean, doing the job I do, believe me, you get attacked, and it's absolutely fine because I feel nothing but love for the people that attack me, and I wish they could get to where I am, EJ, you know. And
Oh,
also,
I totally agree with you, Chris. I totally agree. Uh, sorry, I've cut across you there.
No, the last thing I was going to add is I wish people could understand, friends, when you attack me, you're attacking a traumatized veteran during a suicide epidemic. Just go away and think about that. Is that the person that you want to be? Um, and so it's, I'm way past that of obviously, EJ. So it's fine. Everyone's on their own journey, but I just say that because veterans are the worst for it. Not all veterans. Most veterans are wonderful, wonderful human beings, but there's definitely a percentage. I'd say probably 20 to 30% of very damaged veterans, probably from probably childhood issues, and they can't grasp that we're in a suicide epidemic in the veterans community, that we rate the highest on the homelessness statistics, that we rate the highest in substance misuse, that we rate one of the highest statistics in mental health. And again, I'd say to anyone out there, put the two and the two together before you say something, before you attack fellow veterans or anybody. Why do you think, because we're sold this thing that we're a family and brotherhood and sisterhood,
Oh yeah.
and clearly it's not, and it is for the most part. But so yes, EJ, let me just think this. I want to come on to the great work that you're doing and the response that it's got. Question for both of us here. Do you think that people say to me, Chris, when you wrote your book, or my first book, they're normally talking about, like, I bet that was therapeutic. And I always say, are you joking? I'm like writing about something that at the time was 15 years previous, probably the most difficult time, not in my life, even though it was really, really hard at times, but for my family and everything. Oh God.
Yes.
And I said, no, it wasn't therapeutic in any way, shape or form. I wrote a book because I didn't want to have a job, because jobs don't suit me. And that was why I took action. I took action. And so what I'm getting to is there a day for people like us that we've done our good work, we've helped as many people as we could? Do we have to move on from this, EJ, do you think, for our own healing?
It's really interesting, Chris, that you have raised that question, because it's a conversation that has been happening fairly often in the last few months. Like you, I wrote my book and people are saying, is it healing? And I'm like, crap, no. I mean, I've just like poured my entire story onto a piece of paper. It's re-traumatizing in many ways, but I push through knowing that it's going to give someone hope somewhere. I hope. Um, I'm not here because I want to be famous. By God, that stuff's ugly to me. I'm here because I want to help someone. I understand my profile's got bigger because of the work that I'm doing, but that means that my message is being heard. I get scrutinized and trolled more because of it, but I take that hit because I understand the responsibility of getting a bigger profile with the message I'm getting. I don't. I'm not interested in trolls. They could block, go away, leave me alone, move on. I hope you get your help that you need for behaving that way. And there are days, I think, the campaign started, the charity started, the work is like really, really in full throttle at the moment, in supporting survivors, educating communities and safeguarding and schools to protect their children. Will I ever step back? I think that will always be quite hard, step back. I think there will be I don't think it's about not living our own lives to the best lives. And I think it's really important everyone has that understanding that anybody doing campaigning and supporting and working and mentoring others to have their best life, you have to hope that the person sitting in the hot seat, you, me, and many others, also are living our best life, to be able to do it. Because if we're not, then how the hell are we ever going to be of any use to anybody, right? So I'd like to consider right now is a place where I feel like I'm engaged, I'm supporting conversations that I feel very deeply passionate and strongly for. I'm also working in an industry, performing arts and well-being, which is my absolute love and all I've known from a 3-year-old child to now. I'm living my best life. But of course, I'm human. And that human part of me is that I want to go to the beach sometimes and walk along the beach, and I might walk for 10 days, 10 years walking. It doesn't mean that I don't care for this subject. It doesn't mean that I'm not passionate about it. It just means that there will be times that I do need to walk for a bit longer. And but I'll always come back to it because I understand there's a huge need to continue having these conversations. um so until the day I die, I will do everything I can to support children, the next generations, because no child should suffer like you and I have, or all the other children out there have suffered. We need to help that, but also in a way that doesn't cause detriment to our own mental, physical, emotional health. And that's the place that I'm at now. I don't think I could be here doing this 10 years ago because I wasn't strong enough to do that. I now feel strong enough to do it, but I also feel strong enough to say, actually, I'm going to delete Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, email. I'm going to delete it off my phone, and I'm going to get on a plane and I'll be back soon with no guilt.
I look forward to the day, genuinely, when I can delete all my social media. I've got a target in my mind, a place I want to get to. Can't understand it, EJ. Can't understand why anyone who's not in business would want that in their life. And I'm not judging. I like I said, I don't I don't understand it. That people would probably tell me loads of reasons why they've got it. Yes, it all seems a bit bizarre to me.
It's full on, but I take breaks throughout the year. I mean, in the summer, I take 6 weeks off of social media.
Brilliant.
Everyone who knows me knows that. At Christmas time, I take 2 weeks off social media. But I also have plans in place to support my world. So I work with people who can help those times so that we can all work together, because everybody needs to look after each other, and even those leading need to be looked after.
EJ, let's talk about not my shame. I've seen some of the T-shirts that you've that I've seen that people wearing your shirt, including yourself. So it's hashtag not my shame. I'm not afraid to say I was sexually abused as a child. I was just a child. It isn't my shame. Yeah, it is sad we still have to remind or inform people of that, isn't it? Is it like a thing that some people are really uncomfortable talking about this and it gets a bit wearing for you?
What, people not wanting to talk to me about the conversation?
Well, I mean, the 70s was a good example anyway, wasn't it? All this was brushed under the, or not, you just like kept under the carpet. You
Yes.
could go to your parents and say, look, there's a teacher at school doing this to me, and they go, no, he isn't. Don't
Yes.
lie to me, because they knew that you were telling. Well, sometimes they couldn't believe it because it just wasn't in their frame of reference. Other times Mummy didn't want to know that her new boyfriend was a wrong un, because she, in her mind, she's just got her life back in order. I'm I'm just thinking about this day and age, because I just again use the veterans community as an example. I know a lot of people obviously in the veterans community, and some of them they're such old duffers, they're such sticks, you know, they're all alcoholics, but sorry, I shouldn't use a label, folks. They're all problematic.
They're all struggling.
Yeah, they all experience problematic drinking. Not all of them. I'm joking, but quite a significant amount. They really they hit it hard at every opportunity, and yet they'll come to me and say, "Yeah, so about that addiction, then, Chris,
Yeah.
And they
it's
can't.
Very easy to point fingers at other people.
Yeah, they can't see why they got divorced 3 times, where the children all ended up in the situation that I've just described, and it's fine. But I'm just wondering, in your field, are there particular people that don't want to talk about this, that are hard to talk about? Is it maybe?
Oh yes, lots of people, and I think that's the thing, is it's not a comfortable conversation to have. I have it all the time, pretty much every day, because I am going, hard on with the campaign. I'm obviously working very hard in the charity, and it's important that people understand who I am, right? I'm not just, just saying this. I have an experience that has led me to this point with the campaigning and the charity. And there are people who are clearly glazed over quite quickly, but I don't let that bother me, because if I did, then I wouldn't be here today having these conversations. So I continue pushing and pushing and pushing. People can mute me or unfollow me. That's fine. It's a shame if you did that, because, society needs you to listen as well. But yes, there are people, when I have the t-shirt on, don't want to look at my t-shirt. They know what it's going to say. But if I had multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's or cancer on, they'd probably be like, oh yeah, I know someone who's that, and where do I donate? I'm wearing it to raise awareness. I'm wearing it because there are people who have seen me and gone, I saw you in the high street wearing that t-shirt. Thank you. I was sexually abused, and that's helped them. Now, they might not want to put on a t-shirt, but they now know they're not alone. And I encourage them to go and get some support, and so on and so forth. So it's unlocked so many other conversations, but there's also a lot of ignorance and naivety around this. And there are the people who come to me and say, EJ, I wish I'd listened to you last year. My child's just been sexually abused. And you're like, well, obviously that's devastating, and let me help you, and let's not go back over that year of the fact that you didn't listen to me. Let's focus on what we can do now, and now you can encourage people to listen. So it's a growth, right? It's a growth of a conversation. I've seen it in its growth over the last year. It's huge. I mean, absolutely huge. I put on that t-shirt and now I'm exhausted because it's everywhere and I'm trying to keep up with the world. But that's the catastrophic problem, and it is real. It is happening. And yeah, so there are lots of people who don't want to talk to me, but I don't let them bother me. I'm quite happy to talk to brick walls.
Yeah, and of course we should also put a message out there for I don't know, I'm going to use the word perpetrators, because you might be watching this now and you might be that person that's abusing another human being. And I don't know what EJ has to say on it, but I'd say go and get help. Go and get help, because you can get help in complete confidence these days. That's just how it's done. But when you hurt another human being's life to the levels that we've talked about, you're the one that's got to live with that. And unless you're a complete psychopath with no conscience, I'd imagine that's really hard. And Yeah, I just think you got to do the right thing and go and get help. Am I in the right area, EJ?
I focus my conversations on victims and survivors because for me, that's where I need to be. If there are perpetrators listening to this, I will never understand why you felt it necessary to violate a child in that way. I was that child, and the impact it's had on my life. It's wrong in, and that, and I'm being gentle. It's wrong. Not only do you need help, you need to be in prison because that will keep our streets safe from vile behavior that ruins lives. It tears people into pieces, and often children cannot pick up those pieces and live a young adult life in the way that they should have done because of the behaviors of the perpetrator. So yeah, go and get some help. I mean, more than that, turn yourself in, keep these streets clean. And if there's anyone watching who can give us knowledge on how paedophiles behave so we can stop this abuse, I'm all ears. But until then, go and get help, serious help. Um, and let's focus on nourishing society today by educating young people, safeguarding teens, teachers, to prevent more victims, but also potentially prevent more perpetrators by educating young people on what's right, what's wrong, because not everyone's going to be getting that education at home. And so that's where I sit. Survivors is where I sit. And, you know, just recently I heard of a 3-year-old baby, uh, every bone broken, killed because of a paedophile. Why? I mean, I can't even get my head into gear on why anyone would do that. And that 3-year-old has no chance to be here talking to you, Chris. Um, and so my focus will always be victims and survivors, but also if someone comes to me and said, "This is how we cure it," I'm all ears. But until then, it's for me, victims and survivors.
Yes. EJ, I want to finish on a positive note out there. You're into your fitness. I was down the gym at God knows. I've joined one of those 24-hour gyms, which is
Oh
brilliant.
yes, 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 yes.
It's brilliant if you're a bit mental because you can just wake up at stupid o'clock and just go down the gym. And they always play nice music down there. And I tend to roll around on the mats doing sort of like stretches and yoga type. I've only ever done yoga once in my life, but more that sort of thing to sort of straighten my back out. And then I alternate it. Then the next day, I used to just go for a run every single day of my life, and now I have to go and do the physio is probably more more what I do. And yes, like you said, it's great. It's the difference between having a brilliant day and really having sometimes quite a poor day.
Yes.
What can we say for people out there? What's your routine?
I change my routine every month. I am a professional. I have lots of experience and knowledge in the wellbeing industry, from PTing to nutrition and weight management. Um, and the variety that you give your body is continual development to the muscle memory, to the cardiovascular system, to pushing it out. And so for me, it's like, well, how can I improve all that to live my best life? So I trademarked something a few years ago called living your best life, and it's all about um, looking at your body and understanding the importance of your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health. Now, those three legs, right? If one of them doesn't work, you fall over. So for me, going to the gym is sanity. It helps my mental health. I've been very fortunate. Um, I've not suffered with depressions and bipolars, and any depressions that have needed medicating, but I have also suffered from lots of other different difficulties, from various disorders and complexities. So it has helped me stabilize those kind of difficulties and allowed me to sort of be strong emotionally. And it does feel good when you go to the gym, right? So all of those three things work together with me. I eat healthily, I do nightly fastings. I like to clear my body so that I have a good, I have a good 12 hours minimum between my last meal at night and my meal in the morning. Um, and all of that boosts my metabolism. I'm 52, touch wood. I feel like I'm probably in my best shape now than I have been in previous years. And it just, if you have suffered any mental health difficulties, exercise, you don't need to be going to the gym and pumping and smashing it and lifting the heaviest of weights. You could simply go for a walk. It doesn't need to be at the gym. You could go into walk into nature. It could go, I swim every day. Sometimes I wild swim as well. I like that. I'm quite hardcore with any of my activities. With my fitness, I push through lots of boundaries. But exercise is really just a wonderful thing for us to do, and it doesn't need to cost anything. It could be a walk, and it could be lifting up some, a baked bean tins or things like that quite easily can be adapted for resistance and strength work. So I feel the benefits of exercise have been just brilliant for me. A day without exercise is a bit of an awkward situation for my psyche, actually. It doesn't sit well for me. Um, I sprained my ankle 3 or 4 weeks ago, which was a bit of a difficult box for me, but I adapted quite quickly and maneuvered my cardio to swimming and cycling, which is where I'm at the moment. But yeah, I mean, there's already so much proven research to show how brilliant exercise is for us. I don't think anyone needs me to tell them how to suck eggs, but I can, as an advocate for it, say it's as a 50. I'm 52 this year, so I keep selling myself out here. I'm 51, 52 this year. I'm an advocate for it because for every reason I've just mentioned, physical health, mental health, and emotional health. Um, and I'm now doing cold showers as well, which I feel is really boosting a lot of my metabolism and making me feel very alive, at the end of each session.
Absolutely. Have you done any triathlon?
No, I was gonna do a sprint triathlon, but the cycling part of it wasn't really something that I was into. So I did a year of challenges actually for the charity Project 9010. I did a wing walk. I swam the channel in the pool. I did a walk around the Isle of Wight. And I've done marathons and so on and so forth. I've never done a triathlon yet. I wanted to do Ironman as well.
Hmm. I think you'd
So I'm
love
looking
it.
at that.
Listen to your fitness routine. I think you'd love it. I did
Mm.
a sprint in the summer because my little one did his first triathlon. It's quite funny. He didn't realise you had to swim down one lane and then back up a different lane. So he swam down one
Oh,
lane and then he turned around and swam back up it with all the other swimmers trying to come past him. It was,
that's funny.
but I was so proud of him. So proud to,
Oh,
and I taught him how to swim. He can smash out 50 meters front crawl. It's quite impressive. But yeah, you get to the cycle bit and there's people there, on
yes,
gra-
I
gra-
think so.
grandma bikes and stuff. It's not, no one cares. Do you know what I mean? It's just a really good, really good day out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I will do that. But yeah, so no, fitness, well-being, it's actually been so hit. So as I've gone through various different therapies, I've been dancing all my life, I've been doing fitness all my life, and it's no surprise to me actually. Here I am as an addict, fitness addict, but very happy to be.
Yes, great. EJ, stay on the line just so I can thank you properly after we push the record off. But for the purposes of the recording, massive thank you for coming on the show. Um, you know, an area that's not talked about enough in life, and so thank you very much for doing that. We're going to put all your links below the video, EJ. So friends out there, have a look in the description box below the video for all of EJ's links, and also a link for your book, which is I see is currently on Amazon. We'll put a link there below, folks.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes, absolutely. And just one thing, friends, if you could please check if you're subscribed, because we get a lot of people unsubscribe from this channel without them knowing. If you're not subscribed anyway, if you could consider subscribing, you can. If you want to support me, you might want to check out my memoirs, all available on Amazon, or there's a link below. If you want a signed copy, you can get them on my website. Thank you to everyone that supported us on Locals, Patreon, or become a YouTube member for as little as $1.99 with lots of benefits like our monthly Zoom chat. That just leaves me to say thank you to EJ again massively, and much love to all of you out there. Thank you.
Chris.
Cause I've been living life right like I could just die